Hello, and welcome to this month's edition of Lunchtime Learning with Entropia. Today, we will be talking about showing your value and earning your worth. But really, it's all about personal branding. So, a lot of times we ask ourselves, what is our value? How do you know your value? How do you know your worth? Well, we're going to talk about that today in the context of personal branding. See, I could have put that in the title, but most people kind of get turned off a little bit. It's like, oh, I don't need branding, or what's branding really about? Branding is about letting people know what value you have and then you being able to earn your worth. So when you think about showing your value, let's just think about a couple of questions. Oops, let me turn this off because I don't want to have any disruptions in our webinar, but that's what lunchtime is all about. These are very informal. I've been getting feedback on how they're going, so I'm really happy about that they don't have to be really structured. It's just time for us to come and chat and talk about whatever topic that we will be discussing. So showing your value. When you think about the showing your value, a couple of questions that come to mind is, why should you be hired, or why should you be promoted? Why should you be even appointed to lead that particular project? Or, why should you be saved from that layoff or restructuring? Why do you have to apply for your job? That's what we mean when we're talking about showing your value. So how are you presenting yourselves to answer these questions? And then when you talk about earning your worth, keep in mind that earning your worth is not always about monetary value. Earning your worth could be in terms of, yes, your compensation, but it also could be in reward and recognition. It also could be, again, earning your worth for that promotion or that additional responsibility to prepare you for the next level, being able to represent your organization or your team or your company. That's when you know that you are valued and you are earning your worth. But then it really all comes back to you. What are you worth and what is your value? How do you know that? And that's where personal branding comes into play. Because personal branding is really about who you are, your abilities, what you can offer, your capabilities and your skills. But more so, how do you project that? How do you let people know? How do you let organizations know who you are, what your abilities are, and what you're capable of doing or what you can offer? That's what we're going to spend some time talking about today for the rest of our lunchtime together. So if you have your lunch, go ahead, feel free. I won't be bothered by you having a snack here or there. I'm going to have lunch later today, so I don't have anything. The only thing I have with me is my bottle of water, which I'm trying to drink more of. Healthier skin, what they say about drinking water. But anyway, so let's talk about, what does your value mean? What does your personal brand mean? It means that you have something unique that you're going to offer to your organization, to your team, your business, your club, or whatever. But your personal brand is that you have an edge. You are going to have something, or you have something that differentiates you from others. That's your brand. Why do people call on you to do whatever it is that you do? When people think of you, what comes to mind? That's starting to form your brand. And that's where you know where your value is and what is valuable. It's your personality. That's a part of your value. Some people value personality. Some organizations value your personality, being able to relate to other people and how you relate to other people. Your brand or your value is based upon your reputation, your past performances. All of those things are really important when you're thinking about how you are going to show your value. But you first have to think about, well, what is my value? And that's something that many of us don't take the time to do, to really think about what is our value. We know that, yeah, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, but there are plenty of other people that are good at those same things. What makes the fact that you can do it, or you have that skill set, what makes you of value for that one thing or that two things? That's what you have to really think about. Your value. Why should someone choose you over someone else for that position or for that role? Sure, you're doing the right things. Sure, you're performing, you're delivering great results. But are you that person that's adding value? Are you the one who they would choose if they had to go through a restructuring or reorganization or layoffs? Why would they choose you over someone else when you're applying for your same role? How are you showing your value? Um, your personal brand is also managing and taking charge of your brand is valuable. It's valuable to your company, it's valuable to the organization, because when you know what your value is and you're able to show it to your company or your organization, it helps them. It builds your organization's brand and their credibility. It allows them to expand their focus. So I'm sure you're starting to see that showing your value is extremely important, but it's also extremely difficult for some of us to do because it will take time to craft it in a way and communicate it in a way and project it in a way where others can actually see it as such. Now, let's take a couple of steps back here when we talk about showing value. Showing value doesn't necessarily mean that you are the popular one or that it's a popularity contest or that you have to make sure that everybody knows what it is that you're doing. Showing your value is about delivery, kind of like a fine line. There's a question that people always ask: what's the difference between bragging and branding? Well, when you are branding, and here I'll put my title on so you can see who I am, Marquita. I forgot to do that. And follow me on Twitter if you're on Twitter with questions at DR Qualls. Please feel free to use the hashtag invest, INVEST, in you, with any questions that you have. So I apologize for that brief distraction here, but we're live. Things happen on live, and again, we're informal. But going back to the branding and the value aspect, this is a really tough one because people say, well, I'm really uncomfortable, or it makes me uncomfortable when I have to talk about myself and what it is that I've done. Branding speaks for itself. When you do a good job, people know it is what you do. You have that magic touch, and you don't have to say anything else really about it. You let your work speak for itself. Sometimes you have to remind people or you may highlight it, but when you're bragging needs an interpreter. And you most times are that interpreter when it comes to bragging. I did this, I did that. It wouldn't have happened without me. I made this contribution. Versus, we were on this project and I was able to lead this effort in doing this, and these were the results. It's subtle differences, but it definitely is an art in showing how what you're doing is of value to your organization or to your company versus just simply bragging and boasting on a particular skill or kind of a one-off type of thing. Maybe that's another way of looking at it. Branding is pretty continual and perpetual. It's ongoing. But most of the times when you're bragging about something, it's a one-off event. Maybe I like that. Bragging's more one-off. It happened this time and once and done, versus branding is a part of who you are. Yeah, like that. So that brings up another point about cautioning you on your brand or the bragging versus branding. Everyone is replaceable. So even though you may be valuable to your organization, to your lab, if you're a grad student or postdoc, or you're starting off, or even to executive levels, VP, director levels, everyone is replaceable. So you have to make sure that you have established what your value is, because even though it may not be needed at that one company at the time, it doesn't mean that you're still not valuable. That just makes you more marketable and valuable to other organizations. So keep that in mind as well. Everyone is replaceable, so make sure that you are establishing what your value is in the instance or cases where you have to take your value to other places. And that's fine. That's okay. Sometimes we have to do that. If we don't feel as though, even when we show our value at one place and we're earning our worth at that one place, it's okay. We can transport our valuable assets ourselves to somewhere else. So let's see. Personal branding, personal image. Another aspect about showing your value is how you're showing up. Personal branding is not necessarily your personal image. So, how you dress, how you wear your hair, and whether you're smiling, how you decorate your office or your desk, that's a part of your image which influences your brand. But just because you are wearing a three-piece suit or wearing a designer suit and the latest fashions, that doesn't necessarily um, make you valuable to that particular organization. It does influence your brand. It influences how people perceive you, and the way your image is, the way you dress or how you carry yourself does speak to your confidence, which could lead to your value and how you show your value. But your image is not just your brand. It influences your brand, but it's not your brand. So kind of keep that in mind. Also, the other thing to keep in mind when you're talking about showing your value and how do you project your value to your company, your organization, or your lab. And I must say, I keep saying the differences between companies, your organization, or your lab. It's because the audience for these lunchtime learnings is pretty broad. I have graduate students, I have postdocs, some faculty, entry level roles, positions, managers, or some executives. So I try to keep them as generic as possible. So if you have specific questions, feel free to tweet me or email me, and I'll have my contact information up at the end of the presentation. So if you have specific questions about how do you show your value to earn your worth, we can go through those. But the lunchtime learnings are pretty generic and across the board. Showing your value, perceptions matter. How people see you, how people view you, it does matter. That's why it's important that you are conscious of perceptions and conscious of how you're carrying yourself, because that's important. But how do you do that? How do you begin to show your value so that you can earn your worth? I have three things that I want to talk about. First of all, showing your value means knowing who you are. Let me say that again. Showing your value first means knowing who you are. It's very difficult to show your value if you've not spent time learning and understanding who you are and what you have to offer. And so, by knowing you, that means that you're going to identify your strengths, identify what motivates you, and on the flip side, identify what demotivates you. How do you deal with conflict? How do you deal with working under pressure or timelines? How do you deal with ambiguity? How do you deal with working with people? What's your preference? What's your learning style? How adaptable are you? How flexible are you? Those are the things that you really have to understand about yourself so that you can better understand and better communicate and better project your value to any organization. What are you good at? What do you like? What do you dislike? What do people call on you to do? Those are the things that are about you. And here's the thing about the value to the organization or any organization. There's a matter of what you like doing, but you also have to understand what do they need or what are the needs of that organization. And that goes into the second point. So first of all, showing your value means knowing you. The second thing is knowing your audience, knowing the target. Who are you trying to show your value to? Is it a broad based audience or is it someone very specific? I'll give an example for me. I try to show value to potential customers or clients. And so my audience is the World Wide Web. I want to know, I want people to get some type of value or resources from my webinars, from my workshops when I give them, from my one-on-one coaching engagements, from my blogs. I need to be able to reach that particular audience. I need to be able to give something to them that they will appreciate and be able to utilize to help their career. That's the value that I want to show to that audience. If I can say or do just one little thing that will help you grow professionally or help you make a decision in your professional career, then I have shown value. I've done it. I've done it for me to show value to you in that particular area. What's important to that audience? When you're trying to show value to someone, You really have to understand not just yourself, but you have to understand what are the rules, what's important to the decision makers, what's important to the organization, what's the culture of that organization. Will your value even be appreciated in that particular organization or that particular role? Those are things that you really have to think about when you are trying to show your value. Because, it doesn't matter if you're really good at something or if it's valued in other places. It's almost as though some people try to knock down the door where they're not valued and not appreciated. It's not saying that they're not good, but it's because they've not really taken the time to understand that particular environment and what is valued there. And it just may be the case that what you have to offer is not of value in that particular environment. And that's okay. It just then shows that you need to go somewhere else, right? So showing your value, showing what it is that you have to offer is great. From, you kind of have to look at it two perspectives. It's one, from you, what do you have to offer? But number two, does that target audience value? Is it something that they need? Is it something that is a good fit for that particular organization or that particular team? And when your value matches their values or what you need, then it's a win-win, especially when you're able to show your value. Then you'll be able to earn your worth. The other thing, it kind of goes back to like your personal brand. I have a note here that jotted down. I was speaking with someone this morning and we were talking about this, and he said scarcity creates value. Scarcity creates value. Another way of looking at that is, hey, scarcity, uniqueness. There's a void. We need a very specific talent, or, specificity could be someone who's adaptable, someone who is able to transition between one world to the other. For me, one of my unique skills is that I can transition back and forth between the technical world and the non-technical world. I can go from the sciencey side or the hardcore research, and speak that language and understand those technical components, but I can also transition to the lay side and translate those complex terms or complex concepts into very lay terms where the general public can understand them. That's one thing about me. I can operate and function in both worlds. So is that a rarity? Is it a scarcity of people that can do that? I'd say yeah. And there are plenty of scientists out there. All of the scientists aren't just nerds that are behind, the pocket protectors and the goggles. And we can actually be people, if you will. We have personality. We can do that. And that's something that's unique. That's something that's valued and valuable in many organizations. So as I'm working to show my value, particularly, so I'm using myself a lot because I don't have anyone else to interview today, but sometimes it is easier just to show and use your own self as an example. So for instance, my audience, knowing me and what's of value, it's being able to take everything that I've learned from my scientific background and scientific training. And, I'm a chemist. People say, you're a PhD chemist? Yeah, I am. How do you utilize that in working with people? And data. Data is what we do. I can analyze data very quickly, but I'm also able to take big picture concepts, and translate them into very detailed explanations, or I can take those, big level, high level concepts and translate them in talking to my parents or my siblings who aren't in the technical field, so they can relate to them in real world time. Maybe that's something that you can do. Maybe that's a skill that you have that makes you very valuable in the organization or the position that you're in. Maybe they need someone. Maybe you have the unique skill set of being able to function and be flexible, professionally adaptable in a variety of situations. That is of value because everyone can't do that. Some people are very, very narrow. I can only do this, operate this at this one point in time. I'm not able to manage multiple priorities. If you can do that, that's great. Managing multiple priorities is different than multitasking, however, but that's another subject for another day. So, we're kind of coming to the end of our lunch here. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but how are you showing your value to earn your worth? First of all, you're knowing yourself. Secondly, you're knowing the target. And lastly, it's knowing your approach. How do you do this? So, your resume, you can show value in a resume. It's minor. It takes a lot of time to craft that. You can show value on social media, which is what we're doing now, which is what many of you do on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. You show value by presenting your work at conferences. You show value by being that subject matter expert, by being obnoxious. You show that value by constantly and being consistent in your delivery of excellence in whatever it is that you do. You show your value by contributing to the conversation. You show your value by mentoring others. You show your value by asking and seeking help. Now, some of you say, well, how am I showing my value by asking and seeking help? Well, sometimes we just don't know how to do it. We have it all in us, but we need a little help. And it's okay in asking for help. Asking for help shows your value in showing that you know and you recognize that you can always grow. You recognize how to leverage resources. You recognize how to leverage talent. That's of value because it's not just working in teams. That's of value in showing that you know how to utilize all of your resources. How do you do this? How do you make sure you're showing your value and not being obnoxious and not just being boastful or bragging? You identify what's needed and you're filling that need, your capabilities as well as your abilities. Where do you do it? You do it on your job. You do it on your phone. You do it on teleconferences. Again, social media is big. How are you represented? How do people see you on your social media sites, on your Twitter, on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn, on Instagram? When people are on there, have you become known for a specific area of expertise? People value you for that. And you can translate that value into earning your worth, whether you decide to monetize and become consultants, or whether you choose to utilize that and crafting it in such a way on your resume and interviewing to get you that job or to get that promotion or to show that, hey, you know what? Here comes a restructuring. I'm having to apply for my job again. I've made sure that I have been present here, that I've made my value known in these particular forums where I'm valuable. My brand is not just valuable for me, it's valuable to the organization. You want to make it yourself, show the value and earn your worth in such a way that if there ever were the case where you had to apply for your job or compete for your job internally, that your reputation is out there as a known value to that audience, where they would say, hey, why is Marquita leaving for this company? Do they not value her or what she has to offer? Well, you know what? If they don't, let me swoop her up. Then that just raises your value even more. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that something that was said throughout this particular lunchtime learning about showing your value, knowing who you are, knowing your target, and knowing the approach, hopefully it resonates with you. Hopefully that you've picked up something that you'll be able to apply. But again, it's only lunch. It's only 30 minutes or less. And so there is only so much that we can talk about and not really go into a lot of detail for these. So if you have any additional questions, comments, I welcome you to contact me. You can email me directly, visit my website. I'll be putting up more content on the website. I'm really excited because I'm going through website redesign, so kind of even enhancing my brand a bit more. You can follow me on Twitter. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Several ways to contact me if you have any questions or if you want to explore showing your value and earning your worth even more. The other thing that I ask of you is if there is something that spoke to you today or that you learned and you think that others may be interested in this, please feel free to share this broadcast with them. My reach is only as wide as you, and I'm building my network. So if you know someone that didn't get this directly, please share it with them, and then maybe they'll share it with them, and the Entropia brand grows. But in any case, I thank you for joining in and having lunch with me today. This is the fifth lunchtime learning that we've had this year, 5 out of 12. Next month, we're going to be talking about informational interviewing. And I may try to do something a little different next month, have a guest on. I'm not sure yet, just kind of working out some of the details. But it's on informational interviewing. And that's another way where you are able to show your value or even learn about other people's value. Informational interviewing. It's especially important for those of you who may be on the job market soon, when you're graduating, or if you're transitioning. It's always great to learn from others what it is that they do so you can assess and see, is this really what I want to do? Learning about the demands of the role. What are some of the exciting parts? What are some of the not so exciting parts? When you start to talk to people who are doing similar things, that helps you get a better idea of if it's a fit for you and if it's what you want to do. Informational interviewing is not interviewing for a job, or it's not trying to pull out information for those people to get inside information to give you a leg up on a job. Informational interviewing is just that, it's preparing you. So tune in next month for our sixth lunchtime learning webinar. Invite someone, bring your lunch, and again, send any questions that you have. Thanks for joining in, and see you in June. Bye-bye.